Hi there, my name is Sophie Williams. I'm an aspiring tech artist, and this is the third in my series of videos explaining some of the MaxScript that I've been working on while at university. So this one isn't entirely my creation, it's a modified one of one that Unreal has created. The developers have created for their engine. This is the webpage that explains it, static mesh morph targets. It's by default within the Unreal installer, so you can just get it straight out of that. But I've modified it quite heavily. Here you can see they have the ability to store normals in theirs. I've removed that because it wasn't required. I added two more, the capabilities to store two more morph targets than they had. So if I walk through how it works a little bit. What this script does is it stores offset information between the original mesh and the morph target mesh within the UV channels. So obviously this part of the script creates the rollout, it adds the buttons, then we add capabilities and checks for the buttons. Major points here is that all of the meshes that you're using must have the same number of verts, and the vert numbers have to correspond correctly with each other. If they don't, this won't work. Your morph will end up morphing incorrectly. The best way to do that is to create your base mesh, which is usually either the starting one, this one, or the end. So I created the end first and then worked backwards from it, so I knew how many loops are required, because at any point if you edit the geometry, such as adding or subtracting a loop, you will reorder the vert counts, and then this won't work. There's checks in place in this, but all they do is check that you have the same number of verts. So if you happen to have the same number of verts, but you've still edited the geometry, again, it won't work. But as long as you abide by those rules, it will work fine. So how it works. So for every single vert in the base mesh, it gets the difference between the position of the base mesh vert and the position of the target vert. If we look here at the first one it does it for, which is the second, it has to do the second before the first, so that if you don't want to do the second, it just skips that and then does the first. So it'll do the second morph, then the third morph, then the fourth morph, and then go back to the first morph. This is the key bit of maths that creates this difference. So you get the original vert position and the target vert position. It actually gets it from a copy. Copies are created up here so that it doesn't at any point interact with your actual target meshes. And then it gets the difference, this is the key point, and then turns it into a color using this multiplied by 255. Multiplying it by that and turning it into a color value is what allows you to set it in the vert color channels within 3ds Max, which is how you get what you get it back out of when you're in engine. So we go, if the two morphs do, it gets the difference, it sets it as a color again, and this time it sets it into this set polygon color. It's setting it into channel 2, which becomes channel 1 in Unreal, because the Max has different channels than Unreal. And it does this for each individual vert in the set. You can see the main issue that you run into with this is that polygon color is obviously a float 2, whereas an offset in a 3D world is a float 3. So you can't fit the entire value within the vert color capabilities. You have to split it across 2 channels, which is what creates the limiting factor of I think I worked out the most meshes you could have stored would be 5. I think you could store 6 if you did not care about your unwrap or your light map. but that would be a very strange set of circumstances. So if you just want an ordinary mesh, 4 is what I worked out to be the most useful number here. The most useful amount of morph meshes. If you need more than that, you're probably using the method to do this. Yeah, if you don't have 3 and you don't have 4, it skips them. If you do, it runs through exactly the same maths each time. Just each time it sets the value, it sets it into a different channel. So up here at polyop 2, we set within channel 2, we set the first 2 values, and then we set the third value down here. So the third value, or the second morph, shares a channel with the third value of the first morph, which is where it gets a little bit confusing when you have to pull it back out in Engine. I also have all of the warnings set up correctly so that if something's not working, you can figure out exactly what's working without having to go into the script and look at the listener. The little pop-up just comes up and tells you you've done it wrong. So I've got my base mesh under here. I'll pick my base mesh. I find it's easiest to pick it off the list. And the name, I set it up so that the name changes because I was struggling. Sometimes in the original script, the Unreal script doesn't do that. And so sometimes I think I'd packed the correct one and then I'd packed, the first morph into 2 different channels by accident because I just misclicked. And this way you can check that you do indeed have all of the correct ones in the correct place. Each time I'm clicking those buttons, it's running through a check up here to make sure A, all of the verts correspond, the vert count corresponds with each other. Also B, that it's an answer to poly and it's set up correctly within this. And then we've got the base mesh, we hit pack. Doesn't matter what you have selected at the time, it packs into whatever the base mesh is. And then as long as I have selected on the base mesh when I export it, export selected, overwrite that. Yeah. This is all set up as you would normally have it for any random static mesh that you're using. Come over into my test world. Re-import that mesh. Now what we should find is that each of these values, these offset values, are stored as colors within the UV unwrap channel. So we come into here, we open up our material, we have our text coordinates. You have to set these to the correct corresponding channels. This is the bit where it gets a little bit fiddly. I got this off of Unreal's website. This is how they recommend setting up using their static morph targets set up here. I went into this and worked out how they were setting it up, which is basically this. So obviously they've only got 2, so I had to duplicate it, change the channels, and then find a way to control the change. The best way to control it, I found, they set it up with a sine value so that it's just continually swapping between the 2 morphs. I found the best way to do it was with a collection parameter that gets set in the blueprint for the object that you want to control. It's just a very simple timeline, but gives you complete freedom to blend between all of the different morph targets. So perhaps the way this is set up is to mimic the growing of a tree because that's what I created it for. But if you wanted to have a way to blend different limbs together or anything like that, it works exactly like an ordinary static mesh morph, in that it will take a percentage of the 2 different morphs and put them together if you don't want to have the distinct difference that's in my example here. So once you get the value of the collection parameter, plugs that into alert. Okay. As you can see, it just scrolls through different meshes. It's just on a loop because that's what it's set up to do in the blueprint. But yeah, if you don't require all of the morphs, you can just have 1, and then you only take out the 2 channels that you need in Engine. If you just want 3, you can just have 3. It doesn't really matter. There's quite a lot of sort of proofing in this script, so that if you select the wrong thing or you've got verts or whatever it is, this tells you exactly what you've done wrong, so there's no need for artists to go into this script or look at the text at the listener or anything like that to make sure that it works. It just works, and if it doesn't, tell you exactly what was wrong and exactly what you need to fix to get it to work. Someone finds that helpful?